Bine ați venit la un nou eveniment din cadrul programului Bright Cityscapes. De data aceasta vă propunem o întâlnire cu curatoarea și designerii care fac parte din expoziția semnalizatoare. Designul nu este un panou de bord. Vom începe prin prezentarea Martinei Muzi, designer și curatoarea expoziției, după care Martina îi va invita pe rând, în grupuri mici, pe designerii care sunt aici prezenți, iar discuția dintre ei are scopul de a lămuri sau de a extinde tematicile abordate de designeri în lucrările lor. Voi trece mai departe în a vorbi în engleză, pentru că majoritatea designerilor nu vorbesc limba română. So, welcome to a new event within the Bright Cityscapes platform. Today we are assisting a debate, a short discussion format, where basically Martina Muzi, the curator of Turn Signals Design is Not a Dashboard exhibition, will present the concept behind the show. And she will also have short discussions with the designers who are present here in Timișoara, with the scope of generating a better understanding of the works that we have here. Before I give the word to Martina, I would like to say that Bright Cityscapes is a program that is organized by the Politehnica University in Timișoara, together with us, FABER. I am representing FABER here today. My name is Oana Simionescu. Bright Cityscapes is a program that is funded mainly by the Timișoara City Hall through the Center for Projects. It's a program that is part of the Capital of Culture program. It's also funded by the Order of Architects, Flex and Alber Foundations, and a series of sponsors, Flex, Hamilton, Continental, Azur, Banca Transilvania, and also others, if you help me, thank you. Nokia, Honeywell, and 𝗍𝗿𝗺𝗺. Thank you very much to everyone who has supported our efforts so far. And I will give the word to Martina to tell you a bit about what we are doing here.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you, FABER and OPT, for this beautiful process. I would like to take today as a conversation, in the sense that actually conversation has been a fundamental element within the development of the program, in the sense that with the design, also with the researcher, it's always been a back and forth of positioning ourselves, understanding which were the design questions behind the program, but also how we develop the projects, and today also the exhibition. So we thought that to continue also and to share this moment of conversation would have been somehow important in order to open the door to our process, because an exhibition is not only a moment of publishing through space and through performance and through voices, but also is a moment for presenting the processes behind the work. And working with exhibition in general is really challenging. There are many factors, but in the same time, it also allows us to activate them, which is not something that ends through an exhibition, but it's almost a beginning. And this is a process that for Bright Cityscape has been important since the beginning. In fact, this exhibition today is the main one that talks about design and practices of design, but we also had a preliminary exhibition to open the door to the program in general, which was called Mirroring the Ecosystem, in February, with the opening of Timișoara 2023. And that was a bit the beginning of this journey that I think is important to say. I think some of you will know, but many, I think is nice to share this. Exactly because for us, and I think I can speak also for all the designers here, our project never start with a carte blanche. I mean, they do, but they are mostly a continuation of methods or questions that are dear to us, or in a way they try to enter in processes, in the case of this exhibition, in Timișoara ecosystem. So we decided since the beginning that this program should have been a program growing from the questions of the city. And therefore, the first step was about try to understand with our own lenses, so not giving necessarily final answers, but use our eyes, our knowledge, and our experience to understand the city and decide where to position this program within that. And therefore, with this process of trying to ground the Bright Cityscape program as a whole with the partnership of a university, which means a fundamental place for a city where knowledge is produced, is exchanged, is passed over, and FABER, a newly born endeavor of creativity, which hosts so many different multidisciplinary practices, but also activities. This process of grounding, it was fundamental since the beginning. And we decided to start it even more by expanding this need of posing this question to a group of researchers that I'm going to read because it's good that I pronounce their name good. We contacted Norbert 𝗍𝗿្ći, a data analyst and a sociology based in Cluj. And with Norbert, we started questioning what is Timișoara in the terms of its economy. Why did we choose economy? Because economy somehow touches upon many different layers of the city. It touches upon the landscape, it touches upon the climate, the everyday life of people, jobs, and indeed also specifically in Timișoara, also the university. With Norbert extended this request of research to a fantastic team of anthropologists and sociologists, Vlad Alexe, Vlad Beginariu, Agota Abram, Andrei Herta, Martina Moldovan. They have been developing a research together with the one of Norbert on several layers. Norbert, with a closer team, they started to collect through data analysis major information that would create a portrait for Timișoara industrial ecosystem. In particularly, the questions that and that was also a fantastic process because for me it was the first time to pose questions to a data analyst. So there was a fantastic moment of alignment. And it was the first step for us of another element that is really fundamental for Bright Cityscape, which is bridging disciplines. So how design, curatorship can also collaborate and share processes of research with other disciplines, specifically the disciplines of Norbert, which is so close to data. The questions that were posed at the beginning were looking at how the economy is formed. So what are the major forces, how Timișoara, it happens to be as it is today. And then from there we went even more specific into understanding slowly that one of the main sector is indeed the manufacturing sector. And then we could go even closer to zoom in some questions in order to create, at least for us, a collection of information from which to depart with our program. It's also really nice to share that at the beginning of our path of this project, we also went to different factories to visit. Factories are really special places. They produce so many different elements of what we consume every day, but not necessarily they are open. So they're really inaccessible places. And already doing this step, that while Norbert and his team were collecting information from a data point of view, so let's say from a numeric or information research-based approach, we could also visit with our bodies, environments, and speak with the engineers, operators, and workers in general. This was the beginning, which I mean, why should I start so far away? But indeed, it's not so far away. And it's also really important because later on, through this contact that we establish with specific companies, but also factory floors. Norbert and her team, they developed a series of interviews with an anthropological approach in order to balance the data-oriented information with a more personal, let's say, and more anthropological, which means like patterns of behavior and stories and position and stories of work within the factory. And that's what it comes, everything is collected in a report, which I'm going to read the title, which is Economy in Timișoara, Territorial Distribution of the Economy in the Timișoara Metropolitan Area, which became, in a way, the most fundamental information set that we use and that we share internally, but also with the entire team of designers and also with the public. Also something really important for us is that the research, and this is also always since the beginning really there, we try to somehow bridge places, but also in a way give back to who didn't yet have access to places or these forms of information. Therefore, like it's an open process of research and distribution. In that moment, we are talking about February. We also decided to open the doors to the program Bright Cityscape by manifesting in a form of, through a physical exhibition presentation, a composition of artifacts, products, components that we selected from the companies and the factories that we visited. And exactly in this room, actually, we collaborated with Flex and Azur for the exhibition design. And 10 different companies donated for the time of the exhibition, so temporary borrowed to us, elements of their everyday production lines. And that was a moment, a manifestation of the program, somehow like how to open the doors of this like process, which is not always hard, it's not always simple to communicate in all its facets or complexity. But we decided to open the doors by sharing what was our process and what we were looking at in the specific moments. And therefore, this room became, but with an inspiration to the factory floors. We worked with Bianca Schick, which is here, but we'll join also later on to go deeper in some aspect of this exhibition. We designed, and it was also really special for us, we designed an installation set using the same modular structures that Flex uses for their own assembly lines. And that became host for several different items and a series of informations through graphics done by Federico Santarini that will also join because our work together didn't stop there, actually just started, in order to give a message that this design program is centered Timișoara. Not necessarily because it's only the beginning or the end of processes, but just because we are interested in the ways in which Timișoara as a city, as a place, as a network of knowledge and practices is indeed linked to many others. So basically something we sometimes say, something I wrote often, and then they never passed the curatorial check, the editorial check. It was that we look at Timișoara, what passes through, what starts, but also what ends, in a way that we are interested in the flows, in the movements, and how to, through the design lens, look at them or stop them in time for a while, or scaling it up or zooming in. And that was the beginning of this process of research. The exhibition then traveled to UPT in one of actually a beautiful space of the campus, where was also shared even closer to the students and to the academic network. And that also attracted the conversation between many of the everyday scholars or PhD or professors that leave the campus of UPT. And that's also the beauty of an exhibition, but projects in general, that somehow they travel. So how to facilitate these travels is something that we will not stop here, but we will try to continue. And from them, it started also something really important for the process, which was an understanding that, as every program, the program is always written in advance before any forms of actions. And since the beginning, we were pretty sure, we didn't know yet how, but we knew that was super important to create moments of exploration, of research, but also moments of exchange. The word exchange can mean many things, but for us was mostly important to create channels in which different disciplines would collaborate on something. Leaving open the concept of what it means collaboration. So let's say that this aspect helped us to, actually guided us in designing a program that in different stages would consider different disciplines, but also different practices to join. And the result of turn signals is a manifestation of this different way of working, both for researcher within the UPT university, but also for designers. And in particular, we launched an open call to the researchers of UPT, asking if if some of them would have a research that was ongoing within their labs that they wanted to share with a designer. And that was already the first moment in which design started to somehow appear more in, let's say, what does it mean to who is a designer? What if I'm an engineer, how can I collaborate with a designer? Is a question that started immediately through this open call. We received a series of applications collectively with an internal group composed by FABER UPT. We selected 4 applicants, and there the matching with the designer started. I say this in this occasion because usually these details, they never happen to be shared, but I think it's important because it gives a storyline of a project and not only the outcomes, because there we can visit in the show. Through this open call, then there was pairing with international designers, and that was the first group of project that should have come, and so there was the beginning of these 4 collaboration or projects that would start indeed. In this was a really delicate moment because the application that we received from the researchers, they were pretty much real, really tangible. The beautiful aspect of the engineer world, then also through the research of Norbert, we understood that is really important for the past, the present, and the future of the city of Timișoara. It's a word of, it's a practice of details. It's a practice of research and testing and retesting and applying between the laboratories of the university and companies. The 2 worlds are strictly connected. So the application that we received, they were really true in the sense that they were really close to questions that were fundamental for the academic environment of UPT. And then was with matching with the designers that it became somehow new lenses arrived within the discourse and the research of the engineers, and then it became more let's say, a new path, a new forms of working that for many was never happened. We will go through during the day, I mean not the day, the hours, to go more specific with this collaboration, but also with this way of working. But I think it's really worth it to mention these collaborations. So the first one was between Cristina Sorina Stangaccio and Flora Lechner, where Cristina Sorina Stangaccio is professors at the 𝗍𝗿ći University. The second one was, still, between 𝗍𝗿će 𝗴𝗿𝗺 and Cinzia Bongino, where 𝗍𝗿će 𝗴𝗺𝗺 is a professor at the university. And the other one is between Johan Both, professor at the university, and Parasite 2.0, which is a collective from Milan. And the fourth one is between Jing and Raoul Lionel, where Raoul Lionel is professor at the 𝗍𝗿će University. And the results are in the exhibition, so I hope that through pictures, visits, you will have the chance to see also how these two worlds merge. Something important to say in addition to that is that we considered fundamental also to have individual practitioners that in a way are connected or not with, for sure with the design disciplines, but also that would question and approach the disciplines from many different lenses and also practices. So indeed what makes me extremely happy about is that all the participants come from different discourses of design. The group is composed with so many different skills and way of thinking and processing reality. And in a way, for practitioners, as that's how the program was taught, would collaborate with local knowledge, but also for others would, in a way, have the chance to start from the report and develop their own vision on that. Something important that we wanted to nurture a lot was not so much about using the report as a mostly to use the report as a guide, but also a guideline in order to spot an interest that of the designer, and then in order to starting with a small hooking to the research that was already done, but also to then continue and maybe developed forward within their own directions. There are also some projects, and that's also what we will talk during the day, that are a continuation. As also something I mentioned before, our work never stops. It's always like project by project we build upon our practices. So it was also really beautiful to invite practitioners that were already really involved with specific topics or with specific processes, and ask them to continue what they were doing in this context of Timișoara with the guidelines of the report. And as another information, it's important to say that we worked internally with a team also to create a backbone for the exhibition, a backbone of visual and informations that somehow would create within the physical space of the show let's say we use the word lexicon, so let's use it also here to present this aspect, a lexicon for all the other projects to coexist in proximity. And that's exactly what, at the end, I would read the exhibition, and I'm also interested later how the other sees. The turn signals, design is not a dashboard, it becomes somehow an assemblage of compositions, so that through different tools and to different media, and that brings together this idea of design as a multidisciplinary endeavor that hopefully by linking it with the ecosystem of Timișoara, it becomes even more tangible for the public. Something that happens along the process are also unexpected collaboration. and expected collaboration. There was also a beautiful collaboration between Hamilton, a company, and Théophile Blandet, which was a collaboration that happened within the factory floor, which for a month Théophile developed a residency within the company and was able to work close by engineers and operators of machines in order to produce a design piece. Actually, there's a collection of two objects. Practically, they are lamps, chandelier and a lamp, together with the knowledges of the place and the materials. The materials that I use in this case are materials which are or left over for processes or at the beginning of processes, or before they are transformed in the products of the company. And this also is a collaboration that become extremely fruitful for both. It's like how to merge way of seeing things and thinking. And then also has the possibility to be materialized, not only to create memory of this collaboration, but also to create the materialization of it. And I would like to now start. Maybe I need to mention, this is important, that we continue the collaboration with Flex and Azure for our exhibition design. Is something that we liked a lot. So within the exhibition, again, we worked with the two companies in order to have our also a visual, but also a method that would continue from the mirroring ecosystem exhibition to this one, this turn signals. Also to create somehow, even the exhibition are in two different moments, they are part of the same discourse that grows and continue growing also with different activities, including conversations, but also mediation programs. The mediation program is going to be also an important moment, I think, for transforming the exhibition of design into also material for learning and for conversating with also other publics, in order that the content that is sometimes really rich and not necessarily always understandable in the first moment can be disseminated in different forms. And I spoke enough about the show. Yes, I'm in my time schedule. And I would start now sharing the floor with Bianca, Schick and Federico Santarini, if you guys want to join. Maybe, so we collaborated since February in this project. And but first of all, I would like to introduce them to you. Federico Santarini is an information designer, and we have been working together in moments, in different occasions, mostly when it's mostly on projects that look at translation and understanding of systems were mediated by data. I remember when I first called Federico at the beginning of the process, I was actually even asking Fede, help me to formulate some questions for Norbert, because asking data is not necessarily something that as a designer or it's not easy. And that's actually fundamental within the information design discourse. We always speak about what are data, where to find them. Bianca Schick, she's an amazing practitioner, as a designer. She works with moving images, with performance, like great imagination, but also a fantastic researcher. She accompanied me along the process, looking at digitalization, which was one of the first questions we had, in order to also understand how new technologies and new digital processes influence our everyday life, but also how can we, while we research on the industrial ecosystem, what is coming closer to us and what are also the other practitioners that already talk about this. And then along the process, we decided that there was a specific element that was missing in the show, and that's where you went full on. And it's actually something that is I can't say that.
Hypnotizing.
Yeah, thank you. You in our back. Maybe we can start considering that the involvement of the designers always started from the report. We can maybe give a few words of how we approached it from a design perspective, because this is really important. We like also to keep our roles. So I will give the word to Fede. Maybe you can tell us what was the report for you and how you navigated it, and what was the process?
Yeah, I mean, for me it was really interesting because for the first time in my practice, somehow I had to deal with a series of data that I didn't produce somehow, and so it was really interesting to develop a way to get into it and to understand the work of someone else. And I think that in this regard also the visualization that we've produced now for the show were really a crucial moment somehow, not only to produce a final outcome, but also to study this report and to understand it really deeply and thoughtfully in order to bridge the gap then with the public somehow.
Yeah, within to build upon that, I think the first step we had to do was to somehow select subjects, areas, which were they became also for us the building block of the curatorial, let's say, content. And within this process of selecting this area, we arrived to 5. Do you want to tell the story?
So we extrapolated, yeah, as you said, 5 different topics. I can tell it to you. So the first one is like the industrialization and technological level. Then we looked more at the workers and the commuting and also internal migration. And then about the import-export of materials, but also of waste. And then the 4th one is the automobile industry. No, the automobile industry and also the industry that are related to the automobile. And lastly, then the outsourcing connected to the IT sector. And then we, yeah, sort of, from on one side, like Fede said, he was then doing the visualizations, and on the other side, we also created more abstract visuals. And also being afar, like we were living in the Netherlands, we were thinking of a method to anyways try to create some visualizations that are not data visualizations, but more like visual abstract evocations of the topic. So we're thinking that it would be interesting to use generative tools to make it. And this is what we did then.
Yeah, these 5 subjects helped us not only to orientate ourselves within the large report that touches upon many others relevant subjects of the industry, but also the economy in Timișoara in general, but also there were orientation points for then sharing with the practitioners specific specific starting points or specific aspect that we would have loved to develop forward. Maybe Federico, like, is there any of the narratives that you would like to? It's about creating narratives, right? So through data, but maybe it's worth it to to share one or a couple of through words, like an oral narrative of what we can see by reading the data.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, one of the more interesting is the import and export one, because through that narrative, I think that really shows how Timișoara is connected, and it became more connected through the years with the rest of the world somehow. Because in the visualization you can see, for instance, some data coming from the report of Norbert that clearly show how much the export became fundamental for the city. And after that you can see an analysis based on 7 key products, all related to the automotive company. So this also really closed the circle somehow. And where are the export destination of this, you know? So really showing how this city in Romania is connected with a lot of different other countries all around the world, in all the continents, and yeah, how the things that are produced and the work involved in it really is exported somehow.
And from the profession of information design, maybe it's important to give it an explanation, what it is.
Information design?
Yeah, for you, in this project.
Wow.
It's not,
yeah,
it's not granted that everybody knows. That's why I'm
Sure.
asking. It should be simple.
Yeah, no, I think it's really an effort toward the public to bridge a gap somehow, you know? In this case was the research of Norbert that was also, for me, quite difficult and dense at the beginning to get into it somehow. And so really I think is a nice gesture, information design, towards someone else to explain in clear words or graphics or concept, something that is not so accessible otherwise.
Thank you. And on the other, so maybe to give a bit of an orientation within the space, in the moment you enter the exhibition space, you see in front of you 5 screens, which carries the visualizations, the narratives of Federico. In the same time, the titles of those visualizations are the same. We use the same titles because we explore these 5 subjects also for the AI generated images. But I have a question for Bianca because I think would be really nice to share this process that you went through with Alex Foradori, your colleague in this specific work, about what does it mean to create images and why do we create images, but mostly how did you create them? Because it's not only images, it's a lot of semiotic.
So also together, like during these months, we did quite extensive research, and there were always specific words and specific concepts that flourished the whole time, or that they were there. And so we, so first of all, we created this lexicon, so these words that we sourced from different books, different articles and films, and created this lexicon. This was helping later on also to understand which type of words, which type of adjectives could help us to generate videos from scratch. Actually, it's not from scratch because it's based on a database that it's immense. And I worked with semi-generated storytelling before, but I've never really worked with generation of images from zero, also because it's extremely new tool to make videos, while you can do the images since a while. Like really video generation is still quite at the beginning. So it was funny to understand that I was trying to understand how to do it, and I was writing into into different websites to ask, hey, I cannot do this, and people are saying, look, it's still in the making, but maybe next week we will have the answer. So it was a bit frustrating, interesting as well, but so we used different tools. We used Stable Diffusion Web UI, and then we used this new app that actually everyone can use, which is the Gen 2, which is text to video generation. And it turned out to be less automatic and quick than I thought. It was very long, and it was a continuous data input, data output, and
in the exhibition we are sharing, we're trying to share the process. There are the prompts that Bianca wrote, which are below each of the animated visuals, which one you see it in our back, which is actually, I think is the city growth, right? In homage to the title of the conference. And then we worked with, for the presentation in the space with Kirsten Sprout, the graphic designer of the Bright Cityscape program, in order to give it a format of presentation. It's always tricky to present so many words in a show. But in this case, we approached this lexicon almost as a credits of the visuals. Is there anything that I think you think it's really important to say of the process that is not materialized in the exhibition, but that you would like to share?
I think was really nice. I mean, I think it's really nice the combination of what me and Bianca did somehow, because I see it somehow as the two faces of the same medal. Because they start from a common ground, which is the report, but they are two declinations somehow of the same thing. And as I was saying before, as for me, making the visualization was somehow a process of research and understanding of the report. I think that also the prompt that Bianca wrote had the same function somehow. Because they required somehow a deep understanding of first the report and then the narratives connected to that.
No, I just, I wanted to thank you, Anna, because it was a really nice process, and also Martina a lot. Not being from here was super interesting to dive deep into, a place. It was really nice, so thank you.
Thank you. I would like to invite now Jing and Flora Lechner to join me. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
I'm really happy that you participated in this exhibition, because working with Flora and Jing, in both cases, that's something I can say you guys share, is the surprising process and results. It's a really fantastic process to follow in different ways. But Jing is an artist based in Rotterdam. She went through, you went to art school, design school, and you're now working and teaching in the Netherlands since quite a long time. And Flora is from origin Austrian, also based in the Netherlands, and working in the Netherlands since, I don't know, how many, 3?
Now 3 years since
3
my
years.
master.
And their practice is really different, but they both participated within the Bright Cityscape in a collaboration with the UPT researchers. And in what I would like to talk to you with you today is two things mostly. One thing is to share for the record and for the public what was the collaboration and the results, but also to have a bit of an understanding of your practice in general, like what is designed for you and how you deal with it every day. But I would like to start asking Flora, what was the collaboration that you did with Cristina 𝗍𝗿𝗺𝗺.
Yeah, we created a car called Cynthia. I see that the project really as a collage between like my approach and Cristina's. And that was really great because I think we came from a similar starting point or interest of kind of efficiency-driven society. I think both from a different angle, but that brought us very fast into the direction of the car. And because also Cristina works with embedded systems, and that's quite embedded in a car. And from my perspectives, I was also, it's like really a new topic to me, so I was curious. And also since I like to, like I usually start from the idea of the body and the object, and body and technology is something, I'm really a craftswoman. So I don't really work with technology itself, so it was really exciting to work with somebody who is really from the other side, kind of. And that was a good, how do you say, yeah, it was great to kind of make a piece that has also interactive elements from a side that is not my expertise.
Maybe it's worth it to describe. I don't know if it's possible to describe approach it by words.
You from the shape. Yeah, so
it's about a car, so everybody has a car in
yeah,
their imagination. Like that's also
yeah,
part of your work, no?
So the car is not like a finished car with skin. It is like a skeleton, inspired also by the process. And for me, there are different meanings, I think, embedded in that installation or sculpture. Some of them that I was talking openly, and some of them that I keep for myself because I like to also not reveal everything. And no, but it's beautiful when you can guess and have your own interpretations. It is a bit, I think it's a pity to always put everything bare. But yeah, my inspiration was also the human bone structure and the skeleton of the car in production. And I started from drawing cars and the shapes and the silhouettes, and very fast I realized, okay, I need to go in model building to really understand the volume. And I started building small paper models, and from that paper model I went into a 3D program, what is very unusual for me. And yeah, it was super exciting. Like the whole car is like a big puzzle, and it was for me really a start. Like I never worked like that, and it was really an experiment for me and super exciting.
It also, it carries like in a way it hides, but also if you look attentively, you can imagine how the process went. I think there is something beautiful within the work of Flora and Jing, that is also that the project is really performative in a sense. It's something that suddenly, like the car looks pretty much alive in a sense. And Jing, would you like to tell us your collaboration? Oh.
The collaboration is about the PCB manufacturing and the inspection technology during the manufacturing. And I remember that when you proposed me this collaboration, you said 𝗼 also teaching in China and teaching in one of the school in China, and I was interested in PCB board for a long time already because I come from China, and as we know that China is one of the biggest country to produce many electronic components and the PCB board and electronic device. As we know, like Apple has very big factory in China in different city. But I never got a chance to really research about PCB board and manufacturing. So I thought, wow, that's really a chance for me. So yeah, that was the starting point. But the first step for me was get to know the knowledge from 𝗼 as more as possible, because I kind of need a guide to really understand the PCB board, which is like very abstract, and we don't know what happened there normally. So I think 𝗼 also a really good educator. Like he really he was really good at like explain things in a kind of kindergarten language to me. Really. So follow his guiding, I went to do the research by myself, to watch many videos and reading. In the end, I found like two global standard of soldering and manufacturing in PCB board. Like I really studied like two booklets. I understand that in the production line of the PCB board, like really many mistakes happened in this process, and we have the machine to produce things, and at the same time we have the machine to do the inspection. So they are both two kinds of machines are as important. How to say? Both of them are very important for a factory. So later I decided to, which also linked to my profession. Like I see myself as a maker. Like I really like to make with tangible materials. So I started to research. Okay, what is the fundamental element for a PCB board? There's plastic, metal, fiberglass, copper. Copper is part of metal, and ceramics. That's right. I say, okay, I can use these elements to create a kind of entrance for both for me and the audience to understand PCB board better. But at the same time, also find a conflict between technology and the economy, because of course there's an endless struggle between the mistake we make and we try to fix it. But at the same time, I find out that in our current economical system, people have to make the decision like what kind of mistake it's worth to check, what kind of mistake is worth to fix. I find there's a hidden link to my project and Flora's, because 𝗼 told me that, for example, the PCB board in the car, they are the PCB board worth to do the very expensive inspection and repairing. But for the cheaper one, they just abandon them. It's not worth to really do the very complicated inspection. Yeah. So I found also maybe my project also linked to Xingxia's work, because her work is about e-waste. So yeah, that's what I like about the exhibitions. Like there's many hidden links.
Thank you, Jing.
I also really like the hidden links. Do you see any hidden links?
Don't ask me now on the spot.
Okay. Yeah, but maybe I take the chance to say a couple of things, that the projects enrich each other. They give like different steps. So, and I also what really appreciate about the project of Flora, that it doesn't necessarily talk about the car as a technological object, but it talks about the culture of the car, but also the body as a technological object. Within your practice in general, the body is really important.
Yeah, it's, I think, quite obvious. You start from the body, you touch things, we are a body and we have to perceive and we experience just through our body. And yeah, I just like, for me, this is my entry point, and I think that's a bit, it seems very broad, but I think in most of my works I find niches where I kind of open up my kind of world of how I perceive it, or through kind of this, often, how do you say, when you like body versus car, or body versus airplane seat. Yeah, I kind of like to play around and also switch.
Maybe it's more about embodiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, like something I would like to ask, and this is more to talk more about design. You both say that you are makers, and your final outcomes, they carry a lot of meanings from a research point of view. You said that you start from the body and the object, or at least in this project, and Jing, you often start from objects or a detail or a small process. I would like to share with the public also, where are within the design discourse, where are your projects going? So for who do you make projects? Is more like a collectible work, or a presentation work, or educational? Maybe that's an interesting, because we never ask how your practice indeed happens to exist.
You want to start first?
You mean for this project or my general practice?
Like your design practice.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of myself struggling between design and art. Like, for me, of course, design, we need to face a user or a certain audience. Of course, this idea can be extended, and we can make debation about that. But generally, for me, it's like not today. But as an artist, like, I can more link to the art history or my perception, my feelings, put it into the work. Of course, designer can do that, but yeah, it's another topic. And for this project in the exhibition, I also try to put my feeling in there. That's why I want to, in the end, make the setting kind of very clear, because I put my position in an audience. Like, how can I understand a project about the PCB board? So in a kind of a tangible level, like we can see, we can touch, and we can perspect something more in a more clear way. Yeah, that's part of my making decision. Yeah. Generally, like, of course, I wanted to have my work can be collectible, that I can have more income of my work, but that's very difficult. So yeah, but I think for this project, it's part of educational, but not 100%. Maybe educational aspect is just kind of friendly aspect for audience to step into the project. But, and the next step is like, maybe people can think about, oh, how can we treat the mistake in the technology, and where does all the mistake go in the end? And maybe they will find the conflict there as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think I do different kind of projects, like some of them are more like the project here that are also a bit in between art and design. I cannot say that the car is educational. I think it's entertainment in my case.
It's performative.
Yeah, it's like, but in general, I like to see, if it's a really an installation or sometimes even an object, I like to see my works almost as small stages for action. I also really enjoy this kind of stillness that it has when it's not used and then when it's in action. Like for me, also this kind of two, and also maybe to see when an object moves or like through time what happens. Like I think that's always quite interesting. And what audience? I would say sometimes I believe I design for designers, what is maybe not so nice, or people that are interested in. But I try always to, yeah, keep it open. I don't want to narrow down, but yeah, I definitely some projects fall under collectible design, and because they are in between furniture piece and sculpture. But yeah, I think it's always a very difficult question for which audience, because sometimes you have a very specific audience, like here, and sometimes it's a bit difficult to answer for me.
Thank you. Thank you both. And I say again, how beautiful it is to... Thank you. Thank you. Hello. And I would like to invite here, in finally occupying all the chairs, Alina, Petrica, Laura, Cristina.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I mean, we're sharing microphones.
Yes.
So on my right, there is Laura and Petrica. They are mostly known for many things, but Kajet Journal is a magazine. They also run a bookshop in Bucharest that is just closed, but is migrating somewhere else. And you work as editors, but also as researchers. And I'm extremely happy that you participated. When I discovered the Kajet Journal, I was extremely, like, I became a fan. So I'm super happy. And then we have Cristina Cochior. She works with technology in a really interesting way. You question it a lot. You're a coder. You're part of Varia, it's an independent platform in Rotterdam. They organize fantastic events. You teach in Willem de Koning. And it's really a pleasure that you participated, and especially Cristina participated with her own fascination and research. That was one of the participation I was speaking about, that how beautiful it is to give the chance to project to continue or take different shapes. So not everything needs to start from zero. And Alina Lupu, it's also a big pleasure. An artist, photographer, writer.
Yes.
Good. It's always better to check first. Check. And it's beautiful to have this conversation all together. The works that that you developed, they are all upon visibility and invisibility, or accessibility and not accessibility, of information, but also of stories in a way. So maybe I would start asking if you can quickly tell what was invisible that you made visible within your project. It's a question that I guess your answer can stay really long, but then we can build on that. I don't know who wants to start.
I think we can start.
Thank you.
So when we started our conversation about this project, and we started reading the report, we've noticed that there was lack of information, or maybe not lack of information, but like we've noticed that the printing industry, which really interests us because we do a magazine and we're interested in books and everything that's on paper. We've noticed that the printing industry had a very low percentage in investments and in representation in the whole report, and we thought, that's really interesting. Why not explore this area? So basically, that's what we did, and we started looking for other information regarding this topic, and we found that in Romania, Timișoara was the second largest, had the second largest print house, which was, I mean, looking at the report, you couldn't have tell that, but yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that statistics sometimes can be quite misleading, but that doesn't take any value away from the report. I think it's always important that in addition to quantitative data, to be able to also tell maybe a broader, a more contextual story. And that's what we try to do. Maybe not enough, because what we did is continue the research that Norbert and the two Vlads and the rest of the team have started. And we have done our own archival research, which took a less rigorous, less academic approach, and I think it was much more visual, which is quite unlike us. But we can also talk about our lack of, speaking of gaps and absences, we can also talk about our lack of visual input in general. That's what we try to do, to contextualize some of this information and how that 0.2% in investment actually looks like on the map of Timișoara, of Timișoara's print industry, actually. Maybe another gap many gaps here. I think our installation is called The City is Spinning, but I think maybe we were joking with Martina after the title was decided that perhaps an even more fitting title for it would have been Incomplete Chronologies, because we realized that it's impossible to tell a full story of not just of Timișoara as a node in this big network of industrial forms that exist in this area, but also as in our own project, we had to commit some absences. We had to omit and make decisions. Yes, so some things were left out, and we apologize for that. And some things were included, and we're happy for those things that were included. More on absences?
No,
we can continue.
No, I think this aspect of invisibility is that taking it as a gaps is maybe one reading of it. Thank you.
Maybe on a side note on that, if you go and visit the exhibition, please do so if you haven't done so already. You'll also see that with the risk of explaining some of the visual output from the installation, that there are also some literal empty spaces, some blanks left in the rolls of paper. And that was our attempt of maybe playing a bit with this idea of gaps and absences and omission, and how maybe other people the visitors can cut the paper using the guillotine and maybe add their own stories, not as side notes, but as core narratives, as protagonists to this story that we have put together.
This is something that I personally share with the exhibition in general, in the sense that the exhibition is never like a complete work. We could add other 10 projects and continue expanding the proximity and observation. So it's also a way of approaching information and the way of categorizing it and resharing them in a way that is not final or linear. We spoke about linearity along our conversations. I would pass the word to Cristina. There's also invisibility, linearity, adaptation, evolution, and network. There were keywords in the process. How did you approach the invisibility? I think you had a really important reason why also.
I think in general, the topic of invisibility haunts networks and internet infrastructure at a larger scale as a topic. So it is something that I continuously try to find ways to address and materialize. And I think this is quite an interesting point, perhaps, to start with. Speaking about block and neighborhood networks and community networks, because they do this work of visibilizing, and they do this through, for example, even just the overhead cables, which have been a subject of discussion in the press in different cities in Romania. They have quite a contested nature. Some people really love them, most people really dislike them for various reasons, but they serve also a certain purpose where they they bring the physical presence of the internet to a closeness to the people who are using it and the people who are depending on it. The fact that if there is a storm and the cables are affected and you do not have internet anymore is also a materialization of becoming aware of our dependency on these infrastructures. So I think already these block networks are doing the work of visibilizing, not just through the technical infrastructure, but also through their social presence, the conversations that people have with their customers, the long-term relationships that form in particular neighborhoods. And maybe, so for me, this is very fascinating, that in one of the videos, there is a conversation between Una Maria Androkovic and Ivana Reilanu and I. We are looking at also this relationship that forms between a service provider and a user of said service, and how it facilitates an encounter with internet infrastructure in a much more intimate and personal way. But maybe another layer of invisibilization, I think, is the work that is done by these block networks. The fact that there is currently, less awareness of them existing. The fact that I also was not sure before starting this research if there are still small-scale internet service providers remaining, but there are. I really recommend checking out the interviews with some of the people who are still running them to understand how the landscape has shifted over the last few years, and also what role the IT industry has played in this development. So I think, the work is actually the piece is trying to visibilize the labor that has become, let's say, the basis, the informal structures that set the basis for the development of internet infrastructure in Romania. I guess I don't know if that made sense. But.
Thank you. It makes sense for all. And Alina, what were your invisibilities, or at least the one you were interested in, and then you carry and transformed into the project?
I mean, I don't think it started as invisibility necessarily, or at least I didn't define it that way. But when I got the report from you, I think my curiosity was more on what was not in the report, and it tends to be kind of my way of approaching things. Like you look at what's presented, but it's also a question of what's not listed. And I was curious in, well, unemployment in Timișoara, like not working as opposed to working in industry. And then I was curious in different ways of working which might not be represented there, such as people that work with and gain minimum wage. So that was also another thing. Like I'm curious not just about the professions and about the way in which industry functions, but also how do people actually make a living and how do they deal with that? And furthermore, I was curious in what it would mean for these professions that earn minimum wage to be automated out of existence. So taking that idea further, what would people do with their time if they didn't have to do these jobs which earn the minimum wage? So, I mean, I didn't have that much time at my disposal, unfortunately, but if I would have had more, and I hope maybe in the future that would be the case, I would have continued this sort of line of thinking of, highlighting what not working means, what non-industry means, what, not making a living, what not being employed in Timișoara means. But if I'm to be practical about the project, it was the idea of, in the end, interviewing people that earn minimum wage. And that meant tapping into information which was not in the report, like asking for new references regarding minimum wage in Romania. And I did that because, although I'm Romanian, I don't live in Romania anymore, so I had to kind of change my frame of thinking, because I've been thinking about minimum wage where I live now, which is in the Netherlands. I've been living there for the past 11 years, and this sort of precarity and like ways of making a living, like a baseline way of making a living, was a bit more of my in my knowledge base. And then I had to adapt that to what it means to live like that in Romania. And it was nice to go, basically it was coming here a month in advance and trying to go and find people on their shift. And I mean, they're not invisible or anything, but it's professions which you don't necessarily think about asking directly how much they earn. The idea of asking someone how much they earn is also a little bit, it's like a bit on the verge of taboo. So I would say talking about salary is a bit of a, it sounds like an intimate proposition. You know, you go for lunch and then you ask your server at the end of the meal, like, sorry, how much do you earn? And some might tell you, but others might look at you like you're like falling from the sky. But it is a way of like, it's an invisible topic of conversation, I would say. So there's a range of people that find it very intrusive to ask that. And there's other people that are very much willing to talk about it. So for them, it's not invisible. Maybe they're just waiting for the moment somebody walks in to ask them if they earn minimum wage and how they make a living. So yeah, invisibilities.
Your answer inspired me the next question, which is how this project builds upon your practice.
Well,
Or question it, or adds, or you could test different approaches.
Well, in the Netherlands, so I moved to the Netherlands to study visual arts, and I graduated into becoming an artist, and then also realizing that to make a living in the Netherlands as an artist means, in this day and age, also necessarily funding your practice through these sort of jobs that sometimes earn you minimum wage. So it was a natural progression of trying to integrate those things into my practice as an artist. Usually it's not something that you talk about, so it is a bit like a taboo system. Maybe not anymore, but at the time when I started, it was a bit of a, you don't talk about the fact that your practice as an artist doesn't necessarily fully fund you. It's just you have your life as an artist and you have your restaurant job on the side, or you work in a supermarket, or you, I don't know, you do things, you make do, but you don't blend the two. And I tried to blend the two because I found it absolutely fascinating. Because I think the way you, I don't know, everything feeds into your thinking, into the way you move into the world, you experience the world, and so on and so forth. But it's also this idea of precarity, like you have to acknowledge it and also see what happens afterwards with this acknowledgement of precarity. And yeah, for the past decade, I've been busy with this topic, like what does this precarity mean, but also are artists also precarious workers at the end of the day?
And as an artist, which media or tools you formalize this thing, or you share these things with?
In this project, it was, so the interviews, the conversations were also a way of thinking, and that was the core of the project for me, this dialogue with the people. But then it becomes like a matter of, you take these interviews, and I abstracted them a little bit, so they became, AI-generated characters that would then be animated, and they would tell these stories. But sometimes it is a case of, I do also work with the workers, so depending on how long the project takes, because I think it's important, if you do work with these sort of topics and you are bringing someone's story to life, I think it's important to take the time. But I think in this case, it was quite short term, so I didn't feel fully comfortable necessarily. I don't think a month is enough time to actually take a story and put it in an exhibition. So this was a way of buffering the experience. But if I had more time, it would be nice to actually bring the people that are behind these stories that you have in the exhibition. So it would become more of a, participatory something or other. I don't know. Let's make another project. No.
We do.
Complicated.
Oh, time will see.
Yeah.
I would like to also ask you this question, in how this approach builds upon some aspect of your practice. Maybe not every, but for sure one.
Yes, I think we're gonna continue on the same line of gaps and what we miss, because I think we were joking earlier that with this collaboration started with this almost kind of professional and perhaps even existential dilemma. What are we? Who are we? What do we do? What are we making? We're not visual artists. We're not designers. We do not really work with visual material, but we do try to incorporate somehow research elements in our work, perhaps also archival research. So we tried to put all of these pieces of the puzzle together and see how they fit into something for this project. I think maybe there are two main connections, two main pillars on which this project is also building on. The first one has to be maybe this kind of editorial vision of the magazine, where we also try to incorporate neglected narratives, maybe alternative chronologies, maybe to change a bit how art history is written with regards to Eastern Europe, to see whether we can change the means of representation, maybe also the means of production, somehow see how we can bring to light narratives that have been neglected or brushed aside from dominant stories. And maybe the second pillar, if Laura, you want to continue with the archive.
We have to pass it on.
This is a duo, right? It has to remain a duo.
Yeah, I think we've always been interested in this archival part of things in general, and we try to incorporate it as much as we can into our work, into the magazine, and now into this project. So we also have this another project that's called Camera Arhiva, in which we explore the publishing industry in Romania from 1947 to 1989. So when we started this project, we already had a basis from which we started. So yeah.
And if you want to or continue, what could be would you enlarge the number of roles, or the length, or change the format? What could be something?
I think we would do more roles, of course, like more more timelines, because there are a lot of interesting aspects that you can explore and that we found in these archives. So yeah,
So more chapters in
more
each.
chapters, definitely.
It's funny how the number of roles went down. We started with this idea of having 6 or 7 at the beginning, and then we realized that's a project in itself that will take years on end. Maybe another format could be, because we're not from Timișoara, so we felt that we are outside, also partial outsiders, coming in and commenting on Timișoara. We also felt that we need some kind of more inside connection, and that inside connection we think can be built also by constructing some bridges with local designers, local art practitioners. Is that mine? Cityscapes platform, so also take a look on the platform for those. I think maybe in an ideal scenario it would be nice for us to include those interviews in the roles inside to create this kind of hybrid patchwork of voices where the archives are not history with capital H, which is they're not anyway in the first place, but maybe this is a point to reiterate the idea that those chronologies are not complete, they're not final, they're not real. Come on, they're just a mediation. They're just how newspapers were presenting issues rather than having a truly authentic, if that ever exists anyway. So by introducing these voices, I think we could have a much more valuable insight and perhaps a little bit more authenticity into the contemporary landscape of Timișoara in terms of not just print industry, so going beyond industry and maybe talking with the people behind that compose the industries themselves.
Yeah, I find really beautiful something also common between the projects is this like engagement with maybe in the time was not possible with many systems behind one question, but at least considering them. And probably the position of the project, it becomes like through the navigation of those systems until was clear that there were 3 roles, 3 timelines with 3 subjects. But indeed, it doesn't end.
I think the 3 roles make sense. They work together.
Totally.
But I think it's a never-ending process. I should stop talking. I think that's the sign.
Thank you. And I would also ask Cristina how this project builds upon a process that you have of not only on the topic but also the method of working, like which is with the others.
Well, in Rotterdam, I work with a collective of artists and designers and programmers. And in fact, collaborative work is a very important element of what we do. The focus is usually on what we call everyday technology, so how technology impacts every aspect of our lives in different ways, and that there should not necessarily be a distinction between smart technology and not so smart technology, but rather a more comprehensive understanding of what is appropriate at a particular moment in time. And we do try, I personally am interested in the impact that big tech has upon our daily lives. We try to run the space, for example, without using big tech and try to understand what that actually means. Of course, it's not necessarily fully possible, but we try. And we try to see these conditions as spaces to play and experiment, and also create affirmative infrastructures for ourselves and with ourselves and with others. So not only critiquing, but also trying to build together. And my own interest is in situated software mostly, but what that means is like what kind of tools we can develop to respond to a particular situation and to keep its idiosyncrasies in place. So for me, the block and neighborhood and community networks have been really interesting because I think they do this as well. They work with the conditions that are in place, like that's why I switch between like block or house or neighborhood, because I started with this imagination in mind of the block networks because this was based on my memory. But for example, in different landscapes, you would have the networks the cables would run between towards the roof of a house rather than from a balcony. So like also these like very particular locations and how that influences the way that a network is shaped is very interesting to me. And in terms of method, yes, I think there is something about these vernacular structures that and the way that they organize and the way that they form themselves, that I try to make space for these shapes to come back into the way that something is shown. So that is why the conversations with the different people and their experiences, I hope that to make space for that and to include also the experiences of visitors who are interested to share their own maybe encounter. Yes, yeah. Trying to think if there is something else to say.
Thank you. Do you see any proximities between your works? Before Jing introduced this, something that is really dear to me, I'm actually happy that someone else introduces for me. So I would like to, as a last intervention, before we say goodbye.
I think I see connections with both of you. I mean, a lot of
proximities, not necessarily connection.
Proximities,
Yes.
yeah, but I think maybe we make our installations seem to be largely about print culture, but I think it's a lot more than just print culture, because for instance, the second role has a lot of insights about the history of union movements and movements of protest that were triggered particularly in Timișoara by printmakers and people working in the print industry. So I see here a quite nice connection with you, Alina. Proximity. Oh, I apologize, Martina. A proximity. And this discourse, this idea of fighting for something, of protesting against something, maybe we had a much more historical take on it, trying to unearth these narratives that are hidden somehow. And I think there is this overlapping axis or an arc in time and space, literal space, where you talk about a conversation that we started, but you place it in a much more contemporary era. I think maybe with Cristina, let me play this game till the end. We found some really nice news articles, news items in the 80s about local factories and plants like Electro-Timiș and Electromotor, where quite bold and courageous processes of automation, robotization, and I think they also called it cybernetization. I think they would, right? That would be the almost precise translation. And how these networks of cooperation between young designers coming from from the local high school and local university, how they were being incorporated into the life and the structure of these plants. I think it's a nice grid. It's a nice, almost like a mesh, like a web of lines and nodes that are being built between all of us, not just the four of us.
Thank you.
And I'd like Martina to thank you for making this happen.
Thank you. Now with the closing, we are gonna make a long list of thank yous. We can do it together. No, but I personally thank you, every participant in so many different collaborations, conversation. It was a process of a meeting every Friday. Wednesday. I learned so much, so it was really nice to learn approaches and stories and a way of seeing things. And I would like to read the full team of participants. I think it's beautiful. Teofil Blandet, Cinzia Bongino, Cristina Cochior, Jing, Flora Lechner, 𝗍𝗿će𝗴𝗿𝗺, Alina Lupu, Petre Mogoș and Laura Naum from Kajet Journal, Simone Nikhil from Technoflash Studio, Parasite 2.0, and Santiago Reyes Villaveses. And the four UPT researchers, we already thanked them before. I would like to complete the team with Kirsten Sprout, that did the graphic design of the entire program, but also coded the platform. The platform is a tool that for us always be important to disseminate even more the work we did in so many different ways. You mentioned it, that's really nice. Thank you, Federico, for giving like the hint that there are many aspects that cannot necessarily find a clear space for time, for formats within an exhibition space. So we will work in the next month to consider what contributions for each participation of the program can be, how can it be presented in the platform, and this is already happening. It also, of course, collects all the events and all the images and more details about the projects, etc. And I take the chance to thank you, Nadim Bota and Cristina Petre, for being the editors that accompany us with text, which is always super important in the way how we communicate. And of course, Oana Siminescu for the entire support, for the invitation, and all the connections. And Loredana Gaida for the team of UPT. And I think, thank you again, and we can close, and we're gonna go into a tour now. Bye, thank you.